Welcome, everyone, to the Energy Advisors Podcast. I'm your host, Rex, that energy guy. Got some interesting things to discuss today in regards to the administration changes that are happening with President-elect Donald Trump and his administration coming into power. But before we go there today, I want to thank the partners in the show, our good friends at Smart Energy Centers, bringing renewables and energy technology to everyone. So that's smartenergycenters.com. Our good friends over at Taxhive, listen, if you're going to do renewables and want to get the most out of the tax credits and rebates that you're entitled to, Taxhive is the place to go with. That's why we work with them, taxhive.com. Our good friends over at the Go Green Community Initiative, a nonprofit that is all about helping consumers get the education that they want and need so they can actually work through this great energy transition. And of course, then our new partners in the show that are not on the board yet, but are in the process, our friends over at Energy Transition Tools. You can go there and check out some innovative new technologies that are coming to the marketplace before they're readily and widespread adopted. So those are our partners in the show. So I want to thank those folks for being a part of this. All right. So today's episode is pretty straightforward. When Trump won the election, there's a lot of people in renewables that pretty upset, pretty scared. There's a lot of fear, uncertainty, and doubt. So I did some looking around and trying to understand, what really is there going to be the reality of this? And there are some impacts, obviously. There's going to be some changes. But I wanted to share some things that I have discovered and some conversations that I have and looking around the industry. So first of all, I think it's going to be very positive because we have a situation with this administration who's already had a track record of helping interest rates come down. So I think you're going to see from a financial perspective, that will help. Let's face it, in the residential distributed solar markets and other renewables in that space, one of the biggest barriers to entry has been the interest rates, combined with net metering rules changing in many states, and then also the interest rates. We've seen a very big impact on that marketplace, and I actually believe in discussing this with financial advisors within the renewable space there, that this will be a very first and big positive step in that direction. Okay, so now let's talk about policy for a few minutes because policy always impacts a lot of the things we did. Okay, Trump has named some new executives that he is proposing for his cabinet and heading those up. Of course, these are going to be some folks that have different backgrounds than the people who are currently operating those. So for the EPA, which is a big player in this space as far as funding and policy, he has tapped Lee Zeldin for the leadership in the EPA. Now, Lee comes out from an environment where he is not quite exactly known as Mr. Environment Friendly. He's known as a very pragmatic approach for leading organizations and a lot of financial accountability. So I think there's going to be some interesting changes there. Why is it important? Well, the EPA is distributing billions of dollars regarding the Solar for All projects and the funding. So the funding arm of the office there. So that's important. I think you'll see some eventual changes there, but I think those are going to be less impactful on the renewables industry in total. But again, we'll wait to see. Now, for the head of the Department of Energy, this is interesting. He has nominated Chris Wright. Well, Chris comes out of the oil and gas space. He does have experience with nuclear. He does have experience with solar, geothermal. So I think the jury's out a little bit with our good friend Chris, but I've reached out to his office to see if I can get on an interview with him, as I've done with Lee Zeldin's office. So I'm going to assume that it's going to be a few months before I can get them on the program, but I'll do my best to get them on the program. So in the meantime, I did reach out and had a personal conversation with Senator-elect, well, now he is the senator for the state of Utah, replacing Romney's seat, John Curtis. Now, it's important. Let me help you with some perspective there. John was the founder, while he was at the House of Representatives, as the founder of the Conservative Climate Caucus. Now, the Conservative Climate Caucus is a group of more than 100 congressional leaders that are focused and supporting climate. Now, I'm going to bet some of you out there don't think that there are people on the conservative side of the aisle that think climate is important, but let me rest assured they do. In my conversations with John Curtis, he doesn't see anything changing as far as the vigor of how important climate change and renewables are, but there probably will be long-term, maybe some changes to how things are funded, and it won't be getting rid of the ITC. That's going to continue on. So the aspects of having these programs available to the public are going to stay in place. It is too much of a bipartisan issue. There's momentum there, and they want the same thing. Yes, I know there might be some of you that have political leanings on the left that don't believe that there are conservatives that think the climate's important, but I can tell you in requests for interviews and conversations we've had there, and John Curtis was on the podcast earlier this summer. So we're going to see a continued support of that. And with over 100 members of the Conservative Climate Caucus in Congress, I think you're going to see some universal support there. I think what we might see is some modifications, and this was a concept that Senator Curtis talked about when he was on the podcast, of sort of a sliding scale of the impact of how things are funded based on the impact for renewables. So what I mean by that is higher funding for things that are more impactful, and then maybe graduated out and less funding for things that are not as important. Again, I think that's something to keep on the radar. I think it's positive because there are a lot of people, and I think everyone is this way. Look, nobody wants to get up every day and say, or they don't, oh, I don't want a cleaner planet. Nobody gets up and say, gee, I wish there was more trash on the streets. My rivers were polluted, or my lakes were polluted, or the air was bad, or we don't have a way to continue to transition to cleaner sources. I think everybody does that. The question that always is out there is, how do we get there? What's the path? Okay. Then the other impact that I think is going to happen in this industry, and I think it's going to be have some changes for us ahead, but I think it's kind of slowed down some of those changes. And that is the announced Department of Government Efficiency. I think that this new administration is going to spend quite a bit of time there cleaning house. And I think that's a good thing, regardless of political. There are over 4 million federal government employees. And we all know, we've seen stories about this in the past of government waste, and especially things from long ago, like the $400 hammer that's for the military, or some types of these contracts that have been gouging and really kind of taking advantage of things. So I think we're going to see some very positive things there, because if they can take a couple $1 trillion out of the national budget, that's going to help all of our pockets. That's going to make it so things are more efficient. So I think that's what's going to happen on the horizon. So I wouldn't say go jump off a bridge right now. I wouldn't think that you'd spend a lot of time worrying about the situation. I think there's some positives with the interest rates coming down. I think there's going to be some positives on the continued support for renewables and the energy transition. Look, when you look at the biggest players in the industry, and I've spoken to some that are on Time's 100 most influential climate people in the world, it's going to take us a decade or so to go through this energy transition. So I think you're going to see some positive and negatives, but I'm very bullish. I think there's a lot of good things coming, but most of all, seeing the interest rates go down very quickly with this new administration is really going to jumpstart things. Then we can all sit down and have really intelligent conversations on continued funding. But again, The information I'm getting from the conservative side of the aisle, which is now in leadership because of numbers with the House, the Senate, and the administration. Renewables is too big of a bipartisan and most important objective for these things to completely go away. So that's the update I wanted to get out to folks this morning. I think there's positive things coming there. We'll see. I'm bullish on this. Now, I could be 100% wrong. I'm often wrong. I know how to do that. I'm pretty good at it, in fact. But hang in there. Let's not listen to all the fear, uncertainty, and doubt. I think there's a lot of positives coming. And I think you're going to see a little more balanced approach as we continue to help residents and businesses go through this energy transition. So that's what I've got for you today. And I will say what I always say, thanks and make it a great day.